Y'all ready for this? It's time for another match between Krankendau and ArbuzBudesh. I would love some watermelon right now. Let's find out what happens on Derelict for game number 2. Remember Arbuz down in the bottom left and Krankendau in the top right. These two duked it out in yesterday's cast, and I want to just see how many we can slam on through at this point. I mean, I don't know. There's a number of games here, obviously. There's a 5-game set. Could we conceivably finish all of those in one video? I don't know, but I guess you guys will figure it out based on the length of this vid, because we're at least doing a couple. Let's find out. Krankendau has been rolling in with the Larvosk first, but yesterday we saw him do Quaseth Pool into Larvosk, which is something that AOT kind of fashioned out. Art of Turtle, the legendary man from the United States scene, the North American scene. He's a cool guy, dude, and he was like off the cuff, just on the fly, went for Pool into Larvosk, and somehow that offered him a bit of an advantage versus Krankendau in their group for that particular match. That was on Impetus. I want to say it might have been game 4, but at any rate, it was really cool. So stay tuned for more information on that. Check it out from the May Royal Invitational if you're so interested. And it looks like we're going to be seeing the Larvosk first this time around, although it's pretty close to the amount of money you need for a pool. And meanwhile, we have the gateway coming for Arbuz. I'm really excited about some of the things I've seen discussed and some of the games that I've actually seen played as well, because it feels like some of these people are really mapping out a bunch of build orders and getting pretty, just some interesting ideas, I guess is one way of saying it. It's just, there's apparently some mirror matchups for PvP where you'll go for like a one-gate embassy, which is sort of like a fast robo in Starcraft 1 where you get the fast obs, like 2-gate obs or whatever. One-gate embassy is one build. There's another one that's just straight up 3-gate. And then there's another one that's like a 1-gate rogue gallery, and you go to the gallery so you can make the Cabbalists, and the Cabbalists, at 2 of them, you dive in, you 2-hit a worker, right? And then you dive out. And if you don't have an embassy, that can be really difficult to deal with. Now, I think there's something about that that's a little bit overblown. I feel like, for example, one Hierophant would debuff the Cabbalists quite a bit and desync them from each other, and then make it easy for them to pick each one of them off. I think a Matrix in the worker line could also theoretically help, although obviously if they're attacking in tandem, then not quite, but maybe a Warden in the mineral line to deal hull damage to them, because the concern would be that they would take too little hull damage, and then you would end up in that situation. So anyway, it's some interesting ideas, but it looks like it's going to be a 3-gate opener here for Arbuz, and you know what? I just wanted to bring that up because that was something that I read earlier today, is that in PvP the builds are getting crazy. Now, both of our players have pocketed their worker. This is not exactly the Shambler spot over here, but it is in an area over there that can unburrow and, go for a rescout. It's kind of a guaranteed situation. Meanwhile, this guy is just hanging out, and no way to know this unless you deliberately try to scout that, but yeah, he comes up and he sees the hatch coming, and so he won't even be aware, like Krankendau won't even have been aware of that. The worker is going to go ahead and unburrow before the Zeth gets there. So it's going to get got, but he will scout extra gates. He scouted this one warping in. His worker definitely got far enough to see this one, so he should know that it's 3-gate. His Zeth will see the army move out here. They're not on an attack move, interestingly enough, so yeah, it's just revealing on the minimap. But there's lots of Zeths, and there's a Circuith. I think he's fine, but he, maybe for safety's sake, it's good to go ahead and drop another one. And yeah, some pretty cool, nifty things, if you ask me. There's been some discussion on a technical side about the forthcoming 4th race, the Ascozi, and how we're going to achieve their jump effect. And something that is worth exploring is how Blizzard handled the worker, the Droleth, turning into like a unit with no collision and becoming like going into a spot where it travels to the center of the area, loses its shadow, does all sorts of stuff. So you could imagine a world where you take that same kind of approach and extend the shadow up so it looks like they're rising up, right? And also they stop colliding with stuff and their position just happens to be handed to them by an order, and you know, all that stuff. So, you know, I don't know. There's a couple of things that could be done technically to at least explore a potential solution for that. And I feel like that's kind of neat. Just using the stuff that's already in the code base, even if it's large stuff. This worker is now surely going to be exposed behind enemy lines, but for now, Krankendau is allowing him to keep watch on the worker count. There's some valuable intel that you'll get there. Ovaleth coming in here, already spotted earlier, but indeed there is an embassy as a nexus as well. So Arbuz is going to go ahead and scale up his economy. He's down a good amount of workers. Double Larvosk here. Now at 4 Larvosk, or larva production between the 2 hatches and the 2 Cesians. And yeah, looking pretty nice. What'd he ever do to you? It's true. It's very true. I feel like we do need more typing, so I'm glad Arbuz is here. He's not like the aggressive typer that Shambler is, or Hubsea, or somebody like that, but he's a cool guy. He always has something affable to say. It's like a slightly more sardonic version of Jack Yelansky in some ways. I don't know, there's some stuff about that. All right, we're going into some crazy tech area. Krankendau going for the Hydrith Den and the Zorka's Shroud. So we're going to see all of the Tier 1 Zerg leveraged. Not the 1.5, admittedly. The Pool and the Den can be upgraded in Tier 1, but Krankendau hasn't usually done both of those. In fact, most of the games that I've seen out of Krankendau, he hasn't even done a single one of those. So that's kind of interesting. Now, as you can see here, the Ovaleth is going to get slowed and grinding to a halt over here, but it will spot the Artisans. So because the Artisans have been revealed here, and they will be traveling over to the 9 o'clock position to harvest some Vespene for funsies, remotely, so to speak. You get the little evil laugh, why not? The cool thing is that you're going to get these Artisans over here, and they're going to start returning gas remotely. That's something that Protoss can do now. And Arbuz did try to do that a little bit in the previous game. I don't really know if he did. I guess the gas turned into demiurges for him. But this time around, he's going for the Grand Library much faster. And he's going to go ahead and leverage Psionic Storm via the Cantavus. So that's an exciting transmutation, I think. I feel like because there's so many units in the game, it gets to a tough part where, like, we also don't have... There's a period of time, right, where we had, like, more active units in one race than we had active players. So by that I mean it's really quite difficult to get a lot of different players to test a lot of different units and come away with like some sort of consensus based on all of their experiences with the units as to what those units are like and how good they are. And so, you know, Cantavus has oscillated in public consciousness between overpriced, hard to get, useless, and you know, really good and super powerful and super potent. And I feel like maybe that's always probably a good thing for the caster units because they are so micro dependent anyway. And it's kind of interesting that Arbuz here is going to go for that himself. Krankendau moving out with his horde of Zerg as he takes a 3rd base. I thought maybe he would be going for a 4th as well at the same time, but as it is, he's just expanding his horizons, moving around. If you see these Artisans over here, he doesn't actually have that much dedicated anti-air, so the Artisans can fight back a little bit better than the Scribes can. So he's going to go ahead and charge forward here. Little does he know there's a Witness right overhead. Here's the Storm. Very, very nice Storm. It's going to have to force the Unburrow. Oh, but he destroys his own Witness. That is a little bit of a faux pas, but he'll go ahead and restart it. The Cantavus can hold this at bay a little bit here. Engram very nicely placed. That Cantavus needs to cast another Storm, and it looks like it's going to go on to the back over here underneath our sponsored sign. Very classy from Arbuz. But I feel like this is actually... That should have probably been on top of the Lokizilisks or a little bit closer to the front line, because you can kind of ignore that. There's a 3rd Storm being cast. You can see the damage rising over here, but now there's nothing really underneath it, and the Engram is going to get sicked upon. At long last, it will finally end up falling. Some workers have been pulled to try to deal with this situation. A 4th Storm has made it in. Now the Vengeful Ascension procs onto the Scribes, getting it dangerously close to actually killing that Lokizilisk, surprisingly. And it looks like the Cantavus has fallen, but it's only a couple of Zoryus left. So while this has happened, behind all of this, we do have the extra base coming up here. We do have not very many military units whatsoever out from Arbuz. His synthetic synod is done. He's going to go ahead and see if he can... Oh, look, he'll be able to steal this Lechizilisk. We love that. It does get 4 kills at the end of its lifespan, though. That's a little rough. But yeah, that lake is indeed given over to Arbuz. A classic move. The workers need to resaturate this natural. You know what? Again, you can do some cost efficiency things with the Demiurge. That's why people will rush it, is that it does allow you to take over the Zerg's forces. And at tier 1, it's a little bit difficult for Zerg to mount a reaction to it, right? So now he's got his own Zorius, as you can see. Very, very cool. But yeah, at tier 1, you know, you'd be going for like Bactylisks and Vorvs probably, and see if you can like surround it and break some of its armor down. Although it does have 5 armor, so. But I'm just thinking of stuff that has like enough range to actually deal with it. Gotta watch out there. Witness forward to reveal the Lakes. But that's a nice first volley of spines. Breaks the shields on most of the melee units. Definitely need to take a moment to recharge those. A couple more units coming in over here. Nothing too crazy. Wisely pulling the Zorius or the Zeth back before it can take fatal damage there. Another engram being made. A lot of Hydras coming. And look at how many Lakes we've got over here, dude. That's 12 Lakes just shredding the front line immediately. Can he get close enough to break everything else? It looks like the answer to that is yes. There's still 2 Demiurges here, and the Witness is active, right? Needs to get a little bit closer, and so he shall. The Demiurge is not actually falling. You can see it's trying to be split over there. Okay, one of them does end up going down. The other one will as well. The return spine's not working out. There's a... Okay, at the very least, for Arbuz, there is indeed a third one here. He never unburrowed this one up here by his gateways. But it looks like he's going to go ahead and try to make use of his Zerg tech. These Zerg worship a new master. That one was a bit better for trading down the army. And maybe you have to think to yourself, if Crank was able to attack in with his mass Hydra here, the 20 Hydras or almost 20 Hydras that he has, that could have made a big difference. But you know what? He has the base advantage. He has the economic advantage. And honestly, like, he got very close to breaking Arbuz there. If it weren't for these gas harvesters, I think that actually this third Demiurge may not have existed as fast. Because you look at Arbuz, he's floating a little bit of money now, but he wasn't before. So the Artisan's making part of this work. Like, even though it looks like, yeah, of course Crank is up a base, he's mostly up mineral income. You know, he is obviously up in worker count. Maybe not as much as he ought to be in this situation, but still pretty close. But the Artisans are paying dividends right now. So here it goes. We're going to go ahead and see how many more Lechizilisks Arbuz can claim for himself. He is pulling a little bit further back, so those Lechizilisks might end up just falling away. But no, it looks like now they're stacking up the AoE. And that's going to be more than enough to clear this area out. You can see all those Lechizilisks falling, even more of them being turned over. Krankendau having a tough time of it, trying to crack this nut. Even still, has the general advantage, but for how much longer is the question. He needs to pull his forces back before they get controlled, before too many more get given over. Now, of course, when you take control of the unit, it's not like they're immortal, right? The Demiurges can't, like, control them back afterwards. But as of right now, it's working out okay. He spent a lot of resources. You know, he's getting 7 more Lakes, for example. Spent a lot of resources trying to break that position. A lot of resources that could have been a tech advantage. Could have been more expansions and the like. But again, also, he could have just won in tier 1 tech, I think, if he had attacked after already destabilizing the secret gas harvests that were going on there. Now, here's a question of whether or not Arbuz is going to be able to secure a significant advantage from this position. And I don't know if the answer is yes, because his Demiurges are all the way in the back, not exactly taking over too many units here. And you factor that in, and sure, you're going to get a couple of these Hydras on the way out, but you lost a lot of your own forces. And most of the Lakes are actually still alive. He's just pulled them back, right? He's going to go ahead and cancel those units down there. He knows that he needs to take this opportunity to push on forward. Nice burrow on the Lakes, forcing the Protoss units to arc topwards. And a couple of them are indeed being pushed back. These Demiurges are trying to be Brood Stealers, but I don't know if it's going to work out that way. This one in the back is the one that's taken all the damage. Very, very low at this point. Looks like he will narrowly escape. But the base is saved, which is a pretty big deal considering Arbuz is behind now. It will be 2 bases, and they'll no longer be even on Vespene income, which is the main resource you use for Demiurges. He does have 3 of them right now, but where's his witness at? It doesn't look like he actually has that many. Some workers coming over here. I think that was supposed to be for a transfer to the next base. Instead, he's going to have to come in and try to surround him from the bottom side and get rid of these Demiurges once and for all. One of them has already fallen. The other one's very, very low. You know, both of them dropping to one of them half health, a little bit less. The worshipping workers, those aren't going to go ahead and last very long. Oh, man, it's a total disaster because there's actually 2 Arbuz leak is over here. Does Krankendau even know? Some of his leakers have changed allegiances. I think clearly for the purpose of... Oh, my goodness. For the purpose of, like, the witness, the spectator, we should probably have player-colored burrow mounds or something. There you go. He narrowly saw it there for a second. Okay, he's cleared the deck. No more Arbuz Lake is in the middle of the map. By the way, this one's still hanging out by the gateway. These 2 still hanging out back there. Could be used. Okay, static defense erected at 3 o'clock. No actual expansion. Okay, we do have a 3rd base coming for real. Iris now put down. Krankendau, I love your dedication to the Shroud, but was your tier 2 a little bit too late in this position, right? And did you ever... Oh, no, there's still a couple of stolen workers. Dude, we could absolutely see Arbuz take those workers and turn them into something. Even if you just blow up this ministry and turn it into that, right? Oh, and a Zethar Core offers itself up to its new master. Excellent. These static defenses are going to help out pretty massively here, though, delaying the push and then allowing Krankendau to respond. He doesn't have that much in the tank as far as his stuff is concerned. It looks like Arbuz has fallen away. This is what a Protoss army tends to do in the mid-game versus Zerg, is like sharking back and forth, trying to stay mobile. Can't get surrounded, right? But the tech advantage has been in favor of Arbuz ever since he put down his Grand Libraries, and especially so when he added the Synthetic Synod. And a lot of that, especially the Synod, right? Considering the Grand Libraries themselves don't cost Vespene, but it's what they make that does. A lot of that is afforded by the fact that he's been harvesting from 2 extra geysers, right? This entire time. That's I would say, an underrated component of this. So now that Krankendau has this base and he's harvesting from the same geysers, plus he's harvesting from this gas and ridge, sure, in theory, they're going to be a little bit closer to even on the Vespene income. This can be, you know, equalized, so to speak, in the 3rd base that Arbuz is taking. Just transferring a couple more of them down here, adding an Ancestral Archives. That's a very expensive piece of tech, but it is pretty tanky as well. So as long as the fight doesn't go catastrophically, maybe he can make something happen here. Krankendau is ascending up the tech tree himself. He's going to get his Calculator Lake for those Lyrilisks that we know that he appreciates versus Protoss. And he's also acting on the Spire. So the Spire is going to afford him the Protathalor for the most part. And yeah, it looks like just then and there, he's able to mutate a lot of Lyrilisks there from the Quasi. Very, very impactful. 21 of them? Are you kidding me? I don't know if that Zeth went close enough to see the Artisans, but if he's able to shut that down... You know, this is the thing that I think when people play against Protoss that are actually doing that, they'll be able to make much better decisions about shutting that down, forcing them to move elsewhere, you know, investing into shutting down that money-making operation. It's definitely a pretty big deal. No, no! The Rilla Core is turning. Don't worry, it'll expire. Alright, Azeth has a... Oh, he's found the worker! He's stopping the hatch from going down. Now that is value. There's another one over here, though. Arbuz could take it. Is he above that? Is his valor too high? He doesn't want to make a Hatcherosk. Let's see. There's the fomenting of a very large fight over here. Let's see if either one of these players wants to kill this ministry. Right now, it's kind of helping Arbuz. But look at this. He's pushing, keeping up the pressure. The Lyrilisks and the Protathalors able to keep up with these Demiurges, and that's a second one going down. There's only 3 more. One of them very low off to the side here. All right, the front line's already starting to turn. Is Krankendau going to keep it up? It looks like right now he's still very much interested. Just salvo after salvo from those Protathalors. And the Demiurge is so very low, it will end up being bopped down. We have a Clarion off to the side here. 3 Demiurges still strong. There's another one hopping off the rally point. Many Atriuses to try to stop the swarm of Zerg from finding too much value. But I think we can see it's still finding plenty of value. You got the Uptecton, but there's not much of a fallback position here, and no other units to stand behind it. Looks like finally Krankendau will break through yet again with that advanced technology. And Arbuz, man, he got so close before the tier 2 hit, but he wasn't able to get much more done. It does feel like he's on the back foot. He's got his engram. You know, I think he might be able to clean this up, actually, because the Protathalors are kind of splitting their damage, and the engram is still at large, just shooting down so many of them. But has he sustained too much damage, right? That was a lot of his military gone. Yeah, he's making another Uptecton. He's got so many resources banked over here, actually, which is a pretty big deal. He is going to call GG there. Wasn't able to come up with anything else. I think what he was missing, actually, was... I don't know what the gateways were building that whole time. I think maybe it was actually Zealots and stuff. But if he could get his own front line in action there, I feel like then it would have freed up the Demiurges to step a little bit further forward. Not a crazy amount, because the Protathalors can snipe them. But that's also what the Clarion was supposed to be for, kind of distribute that focus single target damage down into a couple of different locations. Anyway, I thought that was really cool. I think we got more in order here. Arbuz will end up dropping that match, but hey, we got plenty more games to cast. Surely he's going to get on the board. I like his strategy. I do think he needs a little bit more chaff, and probably wanted to see if he could do some run-bys and kind of like use the Zerg's weakness in a head-up fight against them by just sort of committing to attacking a specific base. Derelict actually is pretty open. You know, the third base that was taken by Crank, and then the fourth base, both are fairly open for attacks, but the window was narrowly missed a couple of times there. Anyway, we got more games, so let's see what's up next. We get to go to Maxiom for match number 2 of today's cast. Actually, match 3 of them overall. Krankendau in the bottom left, Arbuz in the bottom right. Horizontal spawns on a 4-spawn map. Okay. I believe we saw cross spawns in the first game, right? That was bottom left, top right, I think. I think it was. Now we have horizontal spawns. And, of course, we have Arbuz trying to score a dub. Now, some of these games, like, these are not all of the games that these two played. Krankendau wants to submit the finest options, the finest offerings. And that's pretty cool, right? That's very, very neat. Of course... I'm not accusing Krankendau of this for clarity, but we have had problems in the past where people are like, I will only submit good games to cast, and they happen to submit every game that they won, you know? So I thought that was pretty funny. But yeah, I think I'm sure there's going to be a match in here where Arbuz slaps him around with, like, I don't know, Mass Gateway, going back to his Ecclesiast roots. He did go for Lattice in that first game yesterday, and then today it was more about Gateway so far. It is going to be Gateway again. So, you know, the breakdown that I would give you for that is that Gateway, pure Gateway by itself, will lose to mass Quaseth units, especially if you end up going for Vorvs in addition to that. Requires a little bit of S-Speed investment, but not a crazy amount, and then you can kind of bank after that. Larvosk is on the way, as you can see. It looks like our players are going to scout each other nice and early, so that removes any worry or doubt. I love the sidestep, left and right, little pattern game. And the pool is indeed coming, as you would expect. I definitely would love for Zerg to be able to do something like this, but people have not been able to theory craft a Hydrith opener as opposed to pool opener, like a den, going straight for the den. I was thinking maybe you could go for hatch into den, because then you're not spending the gas on the Larvosk, but you are still spending a lot of minerals, and the den also costs minerals, right? So, yeah, I'm not sure about that one, but it feels like maybe something like that is possible. It just might be risky, because the thing about the pool is that even though obviously it costs a lot of minerals, when you get it out, you can make units fairly quickly, and those units can be fast enough and strong enough in number, I guess in number enough to defeat any sort of early aggression from, example, gateway openers. Or something like that, bio openers from Terran. It would be another one. Now, if you go for this den into, you know, like hatch den opener or whatever, then the concern that I would have would be that maybe your first couple combat units are too small in number and too slow to get out of the egg, and maybe too expensive so that you can't necessarily spend all your larvae anyway, that you end up getting easily overwhelmed by fodder from the other races. So... I'm not even really sure if Zerg would want to go for den first. But the mere fact that you can, because there's no tech requirement where you need to make your pool before you make your den, That's not a thing in Cosmonarchy. So the fact that you can try to do it makes me want to see somebody try to do it. I just don't know what the build order would actually look like. And I know Krankendau, for example, is aware of the timings. Like, he compares the timings for, you know, the pool first options compared to the Larvosk into pool, compared to the hatch into pool. So he's aware, at least, like, roughly speaking, what the timings would look like. So probably not something that is too interesting to the other Zergs. But I know this guy's a bit of an experimenter, so you never know, man. A tinkerer. Biddy is like that too, apparently. He had some ideas that even Nebelheim, our championship Zerg from the previous Acropolis, was able to take. I think maybe that famous strategy where he did the Kagrant drop might have been something where Biddy helped like some part of the theory or something. So, you know, that you can get the theory from people who, in Biddy's case, right, like wasn't able to make it to the battlement stage. You don't necessarily have to be a sovereign class player. Okay, here we go. In order to make something like that happen. So what I like about this position right now for Arbuz is that he scouted the 3 circuits. He knows that there's heavy static defense being put down. And this pylon is going to get scouted by that Zeth, but look at this, right? Like, you simply cannot do anything about this position as Crank, right? He's going to go for a fast shroud because he does scout that there's some sort of contain being set up, and it's an engram. Now, the reason why you'd worry about the engram, right, is that the range for it is, you know, it's larger than the circuit's range. And look at this. He's just going to step in and kill those Kagrants. That's 2 workers dead, right? I don't know. I think maybe that was a fraud. Yeah, he's yeah, as it got good. The Kagrant is indeed bopped, and yeah, the fact that this engram is going to finish, it should outrange the situation, right? So we'll have to see. Prob fucker indeed. An embassy back here? What is he making the embassy back here for? That's just a flex. Let's find out. You can see him trying to body block as more Kagrants are getting set up. The engram is going to go ahead and finish. And here we go. Couple of shots. The actual Mad Lad did it. He has done the proxy engram. By the way, I think that's actually too... I don't think it can attack the engram. This one over here can. And you can see it's already starting. But the engram's softening up all of these quasi units, right? They can't stand and fight from this position. So finally, the engram will start to take some hull damage. But remember, there's only one circuit that's actually in the way. And the Ecclesiasts are charging forward to keep these Zealots full health while they break the lines. These forward circuits are remorphing, doing their best, but all of the units are getting cleaned up, and the Ecclesiasts are dealing with all of the circuits, and all 3 of them in the back fall at almost the same time. That is GG. Prob fucker indeed. Arbuz making a name for himself. Okay, he's on the board, boys. He's on the board. I didn't think that was what was going to happen, but I have actually seen it. I have actually seen Proxy Engram win the day. Like, that was something that people would joke about because it's such an expensive structure. But it actually worked, and the theory even checks up behind it. Dude, Arbuz, what a man. Let's go on to the next game. And, ladies and gentlemen, Arbuz is in the bottom left, Krankendau in the top right. This is yet another game on Derelict, if you can believe it. I promise it's not the same one. They just happen to have preferred colors, and those colors happened to be the same as before. And their spawns happened to be the same as before. But here we are, checking it out directly on Instagram. So I'm a fan of how Arbuz handled that last game, dude. I think that was really, really quite something. And I feel also like there's something about the fact that that worked to begin with that's just really nice, you know? Like, you see your enemy super hard turtling, you provoke them with the execution of their of this grand plan where you just go straight into a proxy engram. And, you know, Krankendau scouted it fairly fast and went for a shroud because he knew that if he gets, like, Lakes out for defense, there's not going to be much of a way to counter that, right? At least that would be my thought process for why he went for the shroud there. And so, like, it's not even like Krankendau was taken by surprise, per se. Like, he scouted it pretty early on. So, I don't know. I feel like that's really cool. Just the fact that the whole way that all that worked out. It was really neat. Arbuz had actually gone for an Ecclesiast as his first combat unit, too. So he's definitely a big fan of the Ecclesiast still. That's good to know. That's good to know. We'll see. Maybe Arbuz can make this a 5-game set, best of 5. If not, well, you know, I mean, if Crank wins, we still go on and cast the last game. So it's just a question of is it going to have some imaginary stakes where I talk about how, oh my god, I can't believe these guys have done it. Pylon getting tickled. Stop it. It will take forever to wash up. Yeah, sorry. He'll wait for it to fully heal, and then he'll attack it again, right? That's what I would do. No, looks like he's just going to leave. Thanks. I think there is something about, like, if you do, like, some kind of early pool, and you go for straight Zeths, and then your scout worker comes at the same time as normal, and it starts attacking the pylon, and then the Zeths show up. I've done that to people, and forced, like, a GG by minute 3, which is pretty good. Always funny when that sort of thing happens, right? I feel like there's some people who, and I don't know that they're a particular vocal contingent per se, but I do think there are some people that think that engagement between players should happen later than it does in a lot of RTS games. Not just Cosmonarchy, since Cosmonarchy is a little bit slower than Brood War, actually. But at least in the early stages of the game, right? Like the economy ramps up a little bit slower, and just it is easier to saturate new bases, so that helps. Oh, look at this, a canceled gateway. So he doesn't want to go 3-gate. He wants to do something else, it looks like. That's interesting. Pretty fast expansion here from Krankendau. No scribe over here in the corner to scout it. Like I said, this is a different game. Yeah, this is Blood, and this is, what, Electric? Alice Blue. Okay, interesting. You know what I was actually thinking kind of recently is if we can do some kind of color blending that actually looks good, it would be pretty neat to do like country colors, you know? Like, we already tried to have patriotic freedom as a color, but it doesn't look very good for the blending. I wonder if it wouldn't be possible to do something where we basically say, like, yeah, the colors for the player color recoloring here should be, like, coded to this country. And so we would have, like, American flag blue and red and white, for example, instead of, like, the current way that it is. But I know that's a shader effect we could absolutely do in Antikythera, our own engine, which is where we're going to be building our next game. But still, it was something that came to mind just now. All right, so there's a lot of burrowed Zeths, and then there's a lot of unburrowed Zeths, and there is a Vornath here. So it's going to be, it's just like mass Zeth right now. We'll see if some of these get turned into Vorvs or what the Vornath was all about. We're not really seeing any gas harvesting, so it must have been Vorv. Now the Zerg, the Protoss force is going to come in over here. It's going to see one unburrow. No, they're all going to get sandwiched immediately in the back line. Okay, well, fight your way out of this situation. Backs to backs like proper samurai. It's not going to work out, dude. There's not enough zealots to actually sustain this. Though they are trading very efficiently. This doodad blocking so much actually adds up massively. Hold on. Maybe you don't need those meathead zealots anyway. Maybe you just use the ecclesiasts. Maybe you just feed your own addiction. And they charge on forward. Talk about cost efficiency, backed into a corner. Now these workers got to get out of dodge. Oh my god, dude, I cannot believe that. Dude, there's so many thumbnail-esque moments in this, right? This is the case where it should be like, I submit 5 thumbnails and YouTube like pans between them all or something. Because goddamn, the proxy engram... This fucking backed into a corner. I thought for sure when the zealots were dying so easily. I guess it was because most of the ecclesias were firing on the right side or something, so they weren't really healing it. But yeah, that's very funny. I thought for sure that they were all dead. Now, here's the thing: you can just charge forward and, you know, maybe overwhelm this position in a more open ground. It looks like he's gonna fall back though. He does have Quasilisks, which outrange the healing proc of the Ecclesiasts, so there is that. But you do need a little bit of them in order to kill the Ecclesiasts. I don't think he's going to be able to get out of this one. The Vorv's over here off to the side. No, he's going back to his spot! He's like, yeah, I'm just going to go back to where I fought best. But unfortunately for him, it's not going to be enough. Doesn't even pop a single Vorv. Nexus coming down. Not really that many units over here, unfortunately, for... Arbuz. He is going to go for the Stargate. There's a lot of threat from this crank push here. I feel like as soon as he dials forward, we are going to see some serious shenanigans happen. All right, Shroud coming here as the follow-up Vorv has been the only way. Artisans being produced by Arbuz, wants to get back up to his old shenanigans. He's got a pylon over here, which is sort of helpful for the wall. It kind of like seals off this run by. I don't know if these guys are on hold position or not. It seems to be the case. I will say that is something that, you know, games like the more modern RTS games have been able to do pretty well, is that as a witness or observer or whatever, replay guy, you'd be able to click on like the Drakodin and see its command card and see what action it was taking. I feel like that, you know, adding that functionality back would be pretty good. All right, taking a third base, knows that he's got the advantage. I guess we settle into a longer game. I thought for sure that was going to be another like 8-minute barn burner, but apparently not, right? Hydrith then coming once again to take full command of all of the different Zerg units you can make. I have noticed that people don't tend to go for Iziricors versus Protoss. I guess if they have a lot of Ecclesiasts or a lot of Golems, it's not very useful. And those are fairly common units at this point, right? But if you ever get into a situation like this where it's Zealot Drakodin, I think Iziricors can be nice. The bouncing helps to prevent flash shielding from kicking back in, right? So that definitely seems like it's a good move. Artisans now in the bottom right. Harder for them to scout, right? This Zeth moving over here and seeing, hey, there's nobody on these geysers. Well, how about this one, right? And this one's a little bit too slow to see, too far up, right? To see the artisan off to this side. If I see one artisan, I'm assuming there's like 30, you know? One pair of Naths just to move around and see what's going on over here. Help confirm what's going on there. Now, in PvP, what happens if the artisans arrive, right? And then there's already other artisans there, and then you enter into an artisan war. I feel like I need to see that. That needs to be a thing in my life. Static defense by the third. Does have access to Zorkiz, Hydrith, and, of course, Vornath. So, all of these big-ticket items checked. The only thing that's left for Tier 1 at this point is to upgrade the Den into a Scab. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. What's the hotkey to change minimap? To show terrain. It's just regular tab. Shift tab changes colors. But that's probably what Crank thought. You. Yeah, you just hit tab. Hit black. It's true. You're welcome. There's lots of money banked up because of all that. All that typing. Psychological warfare. What does Crank want to do? He's actually making Iziricors. Okay, interesting. And he sees the Gladiuses popping out here now. That's what the Stargate was producing this whole time. 12 o'clock is underway for Krankendau. But if he can't surround and sandwich these Gladiuses, he's going to have a hard time. Doesn't really have that much anti-air right now anyway. No Nathricors out. Oh, that Lake is indeed going to go ahead and hit the dirt. But if he can wipe the ground army, then we can deal with the rest a little bit later on. You can see him focusing firing on those Gladiuses, but only one of them was even being damaged, and now it seems to be nice and free, thanks to the ground army, thanks to the bounces. The witness is revealing the Lakizalisk. Did this attack hit at just the perfect time for Arbuz, before those Iziricors were able to help out. And it feels like Krankendau just had no idea it was going to be air. Now making 10 Hydras. His static defense, his macro lead. Hoping just to keep Arbuz at bay for now. Nice Zorius proc so that the Iziricors and Hydras can get a little bit further forward. But again, these Gladiuses are still standing tall. More and more Hydras are popping out now. Spraith being mutated right on the front lines. That's definitely going to help out. So it looks like Crank is actually not in super squeaky bum time right now. He is going to be okay. Third base coming much faster this time around for Arbuz. You got to hand it to the man. He is harvesting from this geyser as well, affording those Gladiuses ever faster. This is what I mean, right? Like, the fast Vornath makes a lot of sense if you just need a pair of Nathricors. It looks like it's going to be Skith Nath as the option here, because the Nathricors will rend 1 armor, and that will definitely help the Skithicors deal with the Gladiuses. But we're going to see if it matters. There are witnesses here to reveal the borrowed workers, so they're not exactly safe. Let's see if this can be enough, though. Hydra's trying to step forward, but the Zorius is kind of blocking their path. Does need to see if he can step ever forward there. Ground Army is going to go ahead and stay alive for a little bit here, but the Gladius count is starting to fall. Only 4 of them left. I mean, that's the exact number that we had before, and the health bars on these Hydras is not going to stay alive for very long. Down to 3. Gladius does fall back. Some workers have indeed been cut down, but now a Spraith is done to keep zoning these Gladiuses out. And Arbuz, as ahead as he might be right now for worker count, he can absolutely be overtaken in a moment here with 16 of them hitting the production tab. And the ground army no longer there to support. We've got 2 more Stargates constantly producing Gladiuses out the wazoo. Gateways slamming out Drakodons and Zealots. It's a classical Protoss army with the Gladius mixed on in. Tell me what would happen in StarCraft 1 if the Gladius was a unit there. Tell me what would happen, dude. I feel like it would be pretty bad. I mean, Scourge might just destroy it anyway, but, you know. Scourge would destroy these artisans as well. Maybe that's what the Zerg needs. Skithacores are out now to help fight the good fight. No Nathracores, interestingly enough. Not interested in the armor rend. Going for a 3rd Spraith at the 3rd base. Got a nice even split of static defense back at 12. Obviously, that does slow down the harvesting. Synthetic Synod being added now to the natural, or the 3rd base, rather. This Death continuing to move around here, but not scouting the Geyser versus Protoss. Man, these skits could wreak havoc if they just went down there and killed off all of the artisans. Suddenly, Arbuz would not be able to afford his Synod. All right, denying 9 o'clock temporarily with this one Zeth. Protoss army moving towards 12 o'clock and outstretched. 6 Gladiuses now making initial contact. There's 19 Skiths. So, you know. It could be a pretty big deal, but there's also 8 Gladiuses, right? I know that sounds like it should be a favor for the Zerg, but it really depends on how long the fight goes. And right now the fight is, it's going to take a while to get rid of these Gladiuses, that's all. Synod engram, especially if that engram finishes. Here we go, trying to commit the fight. Not that many Zealots and such to break down the Skithacore projectiles, and you can see it's definitely doing a number, but look, as long as you give chase, that just lets the bounces keep hitting. 2 more Gladiuses still left standing. All of the Skithacores have been eviscerated. And the engram does indeed finish. That was pretty much the only opportunity Krankendau had, I think, to put the turn the screws and push the Gladius count back down to a more manageable number. So it's expensive. It looks real awkward for the Zerg player. You feel like, oh my god, I just lost 19 skits. That was 50 gas a pop, you know. But no, that's actually right. Like that, you did a good job. You need to start harvesting from this 12 o'clock position, of course, but that's a good initial start. It's back down to something more manageable, but only for now. I mean, we're talking about 3 Stargate production with the Gladiuses. These artisans, like Derelict is Arbuz's map, dude. Derelict is just straight up his map. He's going for the artisans, and he's still harvesting from 2 geysers, right? And he's on the, you know, otherwise even bases. So the only gas income lead that Krankendau can have is this position right here, right? Because you're talking about 2 geysers. No, I guess they're even, right? He's only even if in gas income if he's harvesting from that geyser. That's wild. That's really crazy. Maybe slightly ahead because of the ridge? Or maybe slightly behind because of the second geyser. Anyway, the Iris is coming. Is it going to be too late? That's the question, right? Because we already have 7 Gladiuses again. This is pretty close to the number that forced out those 19 Skiths to their certain demise. And no management has been done to reduce the witness count, so the Lakizilisks are not going to stay alive for very long. That will be a full wipe. And I feel like Krankendau just doesn't have anything else in the tank. He's only making 3 Zorius right now. He's got to call GG. And that's yet another game where Arbuz uses the artisans to great effect. And of course, on paper, when you look at the replays and you think to yourself, God damn it, I should have just scouted to get those bad boys and stop this from happening. But no, now in this game, now in this set of matches that has been submitted, Arbuz could be making the reverse sweep happen. Dude, that's crazy. Let's find out what happens in the final game. Okay, we are on Impetus for our next and final match. It's going to be Arbuz in the bottom left and, of course, Krankendau in the top right. He is the Sunglow color. Not to be confused with the Magma color. So this map is, of course, the map by Veek7. It's not quite Fata Morgana, but it's still good enough. And yeah, this is, I just was doing some number crunching, and based on what I predict this replay's file size will be, or time length will be, I think we're looking at an hour-long castover. So welcome to the future of castovers where they're all an hour. Jeez. Good grief. How is this man going to cast daily? Well, we'll figure it out. We gotta figure it out, because the castover streak must continue. I have a couple of other games that I would like to go through and cast, and recently, actually, people who are in the know will be familiar, of course, with the one and only Ascatu, and he did make contact recently and said he would be interested in casting some matches that maybe were on the sillier side in particular. And I was planning on doing my own casts of some matches here that were on that fit that bill, but we might end up leaning on him for those particular ones. These are older ones that facilitate some of the qualifier matches from Acropolis #1, actually. So, and there's some matches that were around that point too. And I guess if I can verify that everything works out properly, then I can of course send those his way. But yeah, pretty interesting stuff, I would say. Maybe we can get a guest caster in after all. Now, he doesn't have his own YouTube channel that he publishes this stuff on, so it would be still on my channel, which is kind of funny. But at the very least, maybe we'll see. We'll see what happens. Maybe it'll happen. Enough about the maybes, though. We definitely have is a 2-gate opener here from Arbuz, and of course the Larvosk into Pool that Krankendau has been rocking for a little bit now. I don't know if Impetus is going to afford the same level of freedom to the Protoss player going for the Artisan, because, yeah, you can harvest this geyser and like these geysers and stuff, but there's nothing that's actually an island base on Impetus. And even all of the actual expansions are pretty easy to scout. The map is fairly compact, actually. So, with Krankendau now having to spend a little bit more time scouting around, there is some element to that where it's an opportunity cost. Like, you don't want to have to scout every inch of the map, obviously. But it's not like on Axiom or on Derelict, where often the end result would end up being that there'd be a spot specifically for flying workers, or there'd be a spot where there's an island base and off to the side. I mean, saying that, the 9 o'clock position on Derelict is pretty easy to scout too. It's just Krankendau wasn't really thinking to himself, oh, I should check the geysers specifically, because artisans can do that kind of stuff. So yeah, pretty interesting though. Pretty interesting. We do have a lattice coming in addition to these gateways. Natural expansion fairly quickly here for Crank. Doesn't feel threatened by what he's seen so far. And with the lattice now finished, what is that going to be paired with? It's going to be a vassal, probably for scouting. And we'll see if it's going to be a continuation of additional vassals after that, or if we're just going to see, idols and the like for splash damage. Because I feel like if you don't want to rely on the artisan to get you extra gladiuses or demiurges or whatever the case may be faster, then you do need to watch out for that, right? And say to yourself, okay, I don't have that luxury on this map, or I don't want to pull that strategy because I think he's going to scout me this map. Instead, let me just get to a composition like Ecclesiast Golem Idol, especially if you mixed in Zealots there for more melee damage dealing. I mix in this kind of composition, and I can just immediately force him to go for like Fast Lakes or something like that in order to survive, which is, maybe he doesn't make that transition in time, and maybe we have a solid match as a result. This one is to decide things, right? So it's pretty interesting there. By the way, I got to shout out the community behind this game. Over on Discord, we have a lot of active players, but we also have people who are trying to do certain activities. Nebelheim is planning a beginner stream on Tuesday, so if you can submit any replays that you want to see given some kind of commentary, then absolutely do that. They'll basically be used as an opportunity to inform people about the project, give an example of newer gameplay, and then, higher tier gameplay eventually later on, and stuff like that. And so that's really cool. And absolutely something where I think, even games like this, where, Arbuz is clearly a player who's been thinking about the game and playing a lot, getting a lot of reps. And Krankendau is a player who, won his group in the Invitational and has been playing and thinking as well. So these are higher level players relative to what you might expect out of something like a beginner stream. But even games like this, I think, could be very useful and interesting and positive for the general timing and learning about the game and like thinking about it. So as these circuits are about to finish, with Arbuz thinking about charging forward here, he's going to go ahead and do a flyover with the vassals, see if he can pick a worker. He's going to force a burrow at the very least. Losing 2 of them super fast is a little bit awkward, but now you can see he's going to threaten the front gates as he attacks over here. And so Krankendau has to make a decision, and it looks like right now the decision is to lose out on all income across the whole board while trying to defend that. The vassal's still heckling over here. Workers not yet back to mining. This has been incredibly effective. There's not a single... He doesn't have enough money to make a Spraith because he hasn't gone back to mining. Now he will, and this is additional coordination out of Arbuz to make things happen. The vassals starting to shred those workers in the back line. They will be drawn into the fight, but the circuits are being busted. This is so dangerous here. We do have a couple more units popping out here, but not that many. Workers aren't even back to mining fully over in the natural. Some more units just idling over there. They need to come back into the front line and help out. The Ecclesiasts providing so much shield shielding. We've got a Draken in here as well, just to take pot shots from the back. These Zealots are immortal. They have taken so much damage. But the Ecclesiasts reign supreme. Another circuit falls. This one about halfway done. More Zerg units are in production, but not that many. In fact, only 1 Hydra at this current moment. Can these circuits finish and drive this force back? I think maybe they can, because there's no more sustain. He'll have a little bit more. One of the Zealots is going to go ahead and fall. A couple more units popping in here. No more static defense and no more idle units just wrangling out. 4 Zealots and a Draken, and Arbuz making a push in to try to do even more economic damage than he already has. Has a Nexus coming as well. Remember, that's the key distinction here. He has a Nexus on the way, whereas Crank already has his expansion and will overwhelm the Protoss, finally losing a number of workers in the process, and of course a crazy amount of mining time. It was a very, very close affair, but I think Krankendau will be ahead. It's just a question of by how much. In some ways, you can say that the board is reset, but I think at this point, you know, Crank really wanted to be able to harvest from his stuff for a lot longer, for a hell of a lot longer. He's making a Spraith. He was caught off guard. You know what though? He didn't cave. He didn't just type GG or whatever. He's held on, and if he ever gets across the map to scout that the Nexus is only now finishing, you know. That might be something that he can write home about. No embassy, instead straight into a synthetic synod, maybe floating a little bit of money to afford something like that, but nonetheless, trying to make hay while the sun shines. When life gives you lemons, you create a ridiculous, sinful, maleficent construct that seizes control of everything near it. That's what you do. How would these Protoss know? How do they feel about building the Demiurge all the time if they knew it was one of the most profane things you could do as a Protoss? How would they know that? How would they feel about that? All right, so it's going to be some Hydras. Zets are unable to get in the front door, but they will scout that the army is still at home. The Nexus is indeed up. But for how long? Krankendau is not quite sure. Man, that was an exciting engagement, but I don't know if Krankendau's going to be able to hold off from the rest. I mean, the Synod does have a time where it needs to actually come online, right? And it looks like Arbuz is just going to go straight for the Demiurge, judging by his... He's idling, he's waiting for his money to roll in, but I'm pretty sure he's going... Yeah, there it is, 350 Vespene down the drain for the Demiurge. You know, maybe it's not enough. Maybe it needs to be even pricier. Zorka Shroud now up and running. Interesting stuff. Interesting stuff. I don't know how this game ends. That's for sure. I can't quite predict it. I feel like a Demiurge could come in and really screw stuff up, but it's entirely down to the engagement, and with the Shroud coming as well, and no embassy for detection, that does kind of pose a problem, right? Like, third base now on the way for Crank, so he's still in the game for sure. He's actually taking the worker advantage. Fully saturated his natural again. Well, his main for sure is natural, maybe a little bit less so. Or has he transferred a bunch of workers out from them? Yeah, his main is the one that's undersaturated. Okay. Well, I was sort of right. Just swap some words around. I was right. The fact is, right, the Demiurge is still very threatening. There's a lot of Zealots. No sustain, though. Like, all the gas went to the Demiurge, right? So he has no Ecclesiast. You can see what the difference made by the lack of artisans helping him out there. So adding a Warden, an Embassy, another Pylon. Zeth is not going to get spot the Demiurge, right? So he's just going to spot the army move out. But I think right now, with those Lakissilisks nearing completion, the window is nearly closed. Arbuz will have to wait a little bit longer if he doesn't end up crushing him with this attack. Man, what a tight situation here. Zealots moving forward. Zeths and Quas engage. Zealots are going to be able to be focused down here. The Demiurge already starting to seize control of some of these Hydras. And indeed, okay, he's going to be able to take over some of those. Not that many melee units made here by Krankendau. Reinforcements are starting to come out. The Lakissilisks are in. Demiurge, less than half HP left. Not going to do everything all by itself. Ends up with a single Hydralisk for his prize, but he's lost all of his Zealots. Second Demiurge now on the way. Able to narrowly afford that. But Krankendau has advance warning, right? And now the Witness is on the way, sure, because of the Lakis. You got to do that. That might help out. Because if the Lakis can get turned, you know, the Demiurge can be able to, if it's able to actually stay within vision, you know, within effect range of the debuff, so to speak, then the Demiurge can absolutely make stuff happen there. But I'm a little bit concerned about the current situation for Arbuz. I do feel like the number of Zerg, the fact that the third base is up, this third base for Arbuz has been scouted. Nice gateway placements here to sort of funnel incoming Zerg away from that. So an attack into the natural would be difficult to pull off. And, you know, even if you don't think that that kind of thing is coming, you don't want to leave the door open for that sort of thing, right? A bunch of Zets over here, going to get cleaned up very quickly by the idols if he's not careful, so he does fall on back. He's got a bunch of units arcing towards the third base. So it looks like that's what Krankendau is committed to right now. He's going to go ahead and attack the third from a bit of a vantage point. He's actually pinned a worker to into the little spot there. That's kind of funny. Okay, he's actually withdrawing his forces. He doesn't necessarily trust his current complexion now that the Protoss have vanished. Oh no, is another worker going to die? It doesn't look like... I don't think it's going to be the case. He's going to follow over here and then die to the engram, right? Alright, Tier 2 now on the way for Krankendau. Adding more front line and more Lakis. Dude, he spent so much gas on Lakis, but he still has it for Tier 2. He's found the army in the middle of the map. He's now thinking about taking a fourth base in the top left. Got some units idling over here to the right of the center. Ardent Authority now added. Actually, 2 Ardent Authorities coming for Arbuz. Is starting to set up his third base, an engram and a warden. Very timely at this point. Free Zeth in the middle of the map. I don't know. It's so interesting that they've... Like, at this point, Krankendau doesn't want to engage, right? He wants to wait for Tier 2. And Arbuz is, like, expecting an engage, so he's spending more money on defenses. And he's also going for the Ardents, right? So what I like about the Ardent move is that maybe he can get some Architects up and try to counter-snipe versus the Protathalors. He can also get Cantors and just cleave through all of the front line very, very quickly. It is going to be a very fast Spire, and the Lyrilisks, of course, from that Calcure Lake, the upgrade to the pool. And it looks like Krankendau does want to posture aggressively so that Arbuz at least thinks twice about pushing any further forward. He's only got the 2 Demiurges. Dude, you can see what a difference it made with those Artisans. Now, the engagement is going to come in before any of that tech is available. These Lakis are going to start turning over. Only now are they starting to burrow. Feels like the gateway units dying so fast here is going to be a bit of a problem. Some of those Lakissilisks providing some value here for Arbuz when they're turned over. But I think they're all dead, yeah. They're not going to last very long. There it is. And okay, I mean, he evacuates with the Demiurges. That's a pretty big deal. But is it going to be enough? We call this the Watermelon Power Hour, I think, with the Lakis charging forth. Protathalor is in the queue. I don't see any Lyrilisks yet, but I'm sure they'll be coming. There's no Quas right now. 4th base operational. The Lyrilisks being so fast, if you can actually just straight up replace like a good chunk of your army with them, they end up being so fast that it's really quite difficult to outrun them with anything that the Protoss has, right? I don't even think Hierophants move that fast, so... But, you know, you can see the theory here. Arbuz testing out that Architect concept. So if he goes Zealot, Demiurge, Architect, the Architects can try to deal with the Protathalors. The Demiurges can try to control everything that the Zealots are fighting. And, of course, the Zealots can try to buy time for the controlled units to turn the tide, since by themselves this composition would not be cost-efficient enough to deal with what is going on, what Arbuz is up against. But Krankendau, I think he's got enough Protathalors that it's going to be a tough ask to snipe them with Architects. I do think it's pretty neat to think of the Architect as like a sniper role, because Protoss, like the Terran's sniper roles are like, I guess the artillery with like the phalanx and stuff, and then obviously the things like the Silver Tongue in Tier 3. And then for Zerg, it's obviously like the Protathalor and, you know, the to a lesser extent the Bactylisk at Tier 1. Oh no, the Nexus got cancelled. Rillarokor is turning the tide. I can't believe it. All right, Krankendau thinking about pulling the trigger. The idea that the Protoss artillery/sniper unit would be this hulking monstrosity, robotic thing, is pretty interesting. We'll see if that's going to be precise enough for Arbuz to cleave the Protathalor countdown to a size that is more manageable. Obviously, they don't attack air, so that can be another option if you go like Magisters or obviously the Gladius that we saw in Derelict, but that's not the avenue that Arbuz has taken this time around. Instead, he's going to charge forward as the Lakes start to burrow, and these Zealots are not going to be long for this world as a result. All of the Demiurges in the front are absolutely going to be focused down if he's not careful, and you can see them falling down to red HP. Architects are still plenty fine right now. I don't see any detection over here. Oh, the Witness is off to the side there. Okay, well that engram might have needed that because, of course, it's completely gone. But the Architects are starting to thin the herd, right? It's just Protathalor Lakes right now. And they wasn't able to actually pick any of the Demiurges off, so this attack force ended up okay. The Zealots that were dispatched over here to take care of the little Heckle force in the bottom right end up coming on back. And now we're on even bases in just about, right? Arbuz is going to take this 4th. So maybe the Architects were a potentially useful situation there. I guess if you deal with all of the other units in addition to the Protathalors, then like the Protathalors themselves don't necessarily fight very well as a peeling force. You know, you're probably going to end up focusing all of your efforts on overkilling individual units if you're trying to like kite stutter step with them. Whereas the like with the Lyrilisks and with the other chaff in the front, it's a lot harder to like precision strike those particular units. So unfortunately for Arbuz, he wasn't able to really get too far with that attack force. He didn't kill any workers, really. He sort of dented the defensive forces there. But that's about it. Free Quas. Hashtag. Okay, so the 4th base we know Krankendau is aware of. But Arbuz is not so saturating it just yet. He's actually wanting to try to attack with this position that he's been able to stab into. So many Architects, dude. I'm a fan of it. Let's see what Krankendau can do as a response. Could get sandwiched over here, but no, Arbuz moves forward. Maybe that's a wise choice. His Lyrilisks are bouncing against all of the Zealots, and they are basically evaporating here. But again, that multi-pronged attack here, the multi-layer of Krankendau's force, is allowing the Lyrilisks to absorb some of the early action, while the Architects end up falling to the very thing they were hoping to dismantle. And that is going to be a very big wipe. Again, there's not much left besides Protathalors, but the Zealot count is too low to really contest them. 1 Demiurge left, 3 Architects left. Maybe he can start to turn this tide. Oh no, attacking your own lake that's not quite what you want. He's got enough static defense over here that Arbuz can't really push the issue from this position, right? He's got more units coming. He has saved some of his tech units, but he's lost more than half of his Architects. He's lost one of his 2 Demiurges. The one that's left is the one that's super wounded and easily be sniped out here from this position. The defenses just killed an Architect because there's not that much maneuverability over in this position either. And now the Demiurge is down. There's only the 1 Architect left. He tries to make a mad dash up the ramp, but I think that was a bit of a mistake there. He's got some turned Quasis. They don't do too hot versus circuits, as we all know. GG is called. Krankendau has outlasted the man. And that concludes the game at a mean even 20 minutes, or 20 minutes and 10 seconds in the score screen because lard. And that's what I got for you today. Again, the you call that the watermelon power hour. Arbuz was very, very close a couple of times in that game, but he could not make the reverse sweep happen of course, in the matches that we saw. They were apparently more played. But these were the ones that Crank thought were fit for casting. And you know what? I think Crank has pretty good taste. Love to see that proxy engram. That was crazy. Love to see the way that things worked out with some of the artisan shenanigans and stuff like that. Cool stuff. Cool stuff. All right. We'll be back tomorrow with another cast. It probably won't be an hour long, but you'll have to stay subscribed and watch tomorrow in order to find out. Hope to see you very soon joining this battlefield that we got going on here, the melee. And we'll see you pretty soon. GG's.